All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to try and break down the core philosophy of the massive bestseller 12 Rules for Life. It's a book that presents itself as more than just a self-help guide. It's framed as a toolkit for dealing with the fundamental challenges of just being alive.
So, where do we start? Well, with a question that I know sounds a little out of left field. Why do lobsters fight? According to the book, it's for all the big stuff. The best territory, status, mates. It's this primal battle that sets up a very clear hierarchy. And this isn't just a fun fact about crustaceans, right? The book argues that this basic idea of a natural hierarchy is a thread that runs through our own lives too. And that brings us to the book's central premise. The whole idea is right there in the subtitle. It's meant to be an antidote to chaos. It basically looks at life as this constant struggle and then offers a set of principles for how to navigate it all.
So the big argument here is that life, well, it's full of suffering and uncertainty. It just is. And that state of the unknown, of all the potential threats and anxiety, that's what the book calls chaos. And to get through all that without just being completely overwhelmed, we need what it calls ordering principles. You know, rules, standards, values, something to give us a sense of meaning that makes all the difficulty worth it. The whole book is really built on this dynamic between two fundamental realities, chaos and order. And they're always in tension with each other. Think of it this way. Too much order, and you get tyranny, things get rigid and stale. But too much chaos, well, that leads to paralyzing anxiety and total breakdown. The sweet spot, the place where life is actually meaningful, is found right on that razor's edge between the two.
Okay, so if we need order to balance out all this chaos, where does it even come from? Well, the book suggests that a lot of the time, it emerges from these natural hierarchies, which can be formed in a pretty brutal winner-take-all kind of way.
And remember those lobsters? Well, this isn't just about them fighting for the best rock on the ocean floor. The book argues this same principle of unequal distribution applies pretty much everywhere in human society. A really small number of people in any creative field tend to produce a huge chunk of the total output.
I mean, just look at classical music, for example. The book makes this great point that an incredibly small number of composers, you know, the big four, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Tchaikovsky, they wrote almost all the music that modern orchestras still play. And get this, even for them, we only listen to a tiny fraction of all the music they wrote.
You know, this pattern shows up so often, it actually has a name, Price's Law. It's presented as this sort of natural constant. The idea is that this inequality in who produces what isn't some flaw in the system, but maybe it's just a fundamental feature of it, whether you're looking at scientific papers, book sales, or even how often we use certain words.
All right, so that's the big picture stuff, but how does any of this apply to our lives? Well, that's where we get to this idea of confronting your dragon. This is all about dealing with the chaos that's not out there in the world, but the chaos that's right inside of us.
To explain this, the book tells this really powerful children's story. There's a boy, Billy, who finds this little dragon in his room. He tells his mom, but she just says there's no such thing as dragons. And every time she denies it exists, the dragon gets a little bigger and bigger until it's so huge it fills the whole house and then just runs off with the house on its back. And the only thing that makes it shrink, the moment Billy finally stands up and says, "Mom, there is a dragon."
And the message here is just so clear. The problems you ignore don't just go away. They grow. They get bigger and scarier in the dark, all because, as Billy says in the story, maybe it wanted to be noticed.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? The only way to stop the dragons of chaos from totally consuming you is to face them. You have to admit they're there. That's the first step to making them small enough to actually deal with. Okay, so you've got to face your own dragons. But you're not always doing it alone, right? And who you have around you really matters. That brings us to this next idea, choosing your companions. The people you surround yourself with can either help you fight, or they can end up feeding your dragon for you.
The book basically says you've got two choices. You can hang around with people who are aiming up, people who support you and make you better, or you can hang out with people who are cynical and just drag you down. Because, as the book puts it pretty bluntly, down is a lot easier than up.
And, you know, it throws out a pretty serious warning here, especially for anyone who has that noble desire to save someone. It asks this really tough question. The argument is that if you bring a really negative person into a healthy group, it's way more likely that their attitude will spread and pull everyone down, rather than the group lifting them up.
And all of this kind of builds to our final big idea here, this concept of living on the edge.
The point isn't to build a fortress and hide inside perfect, safe order. No, the idea is that you find meaning on that dangerous, challenging path right between order and chaos.
So, to wrap this all up, the book gives us this really vivid image of skateboarders. You see these kids doing these incredibly dangerous things, jumping onto handrails, sliding down. And yeah, it looks reckless. But the book argues there's something much, much deeper going on.
And this is the absolute key insight. They're not just trying to be safe. They are voluntarily facing a manageable kind of danger in order to build competence, to build mastery. And the argument is that real security, it doesn't come from avoiding all risks. It comes from developing the competence to handle the risks that life throws at you. That's the ultimate protection against chaos.
So when you boil it all down, the book concludes that real meaning isn't found in total safety or total chaos. It's found right there, on that razor's edge, where you're just stable enough not to fall apart, but you're also challenged enough to keep growing. And so it leaves us all with a final question to think about. Where is that meaningful edge for you?